Sutra of Resource Law Gift. When sharing with someone or lending, give only as much as you are ready to offer as a gift. Give and share sincerely, without expecting anything in return. This will help prevent problems and conflicts and allow you to enjoy life more when something unexpectedly comes back to you in any form. As Ostap Bender once said, as long as there is currency in the country, there will always be people who have plenty of it. But there are always people who have little or no money at all. There are never enough sweet buns for everyone, sang Bulat O Kujava. And to get those buns, we may add, people are doomed to borrow money and then repay their debts. This involves not only a market or purely financial issue but also a moral and even civilizational one. Debts not backed by real resources become a terrible burden for a person. From unpayable debts arose debt slavery in ancient times, debtors' prisons in the Middle Ages and modern times. In some places, debt slavery and prisons still exist today. At the earliest stages of civilization's history, and thus the history of money, since one of the markers of a civilized society is often the presence of currency, creditors could legally control not only the debtor's freedom but also their life. According to the Roman laws of the 12 Tables, a bankrupt debtor could be taken to the market square on a set day, his body could be cut into pieces, according to the number of creditors, and thus the lenders would be compensated. Fortunately, those times have passed. But this didn't happen by itself. Almost all revolutionary movements in history have been driven by the demand to cancel debts and prohibit debt slavery. Over time, debt laws have softened, and the power of creditors and money lenders has been limited not only by specific laws but also by moral guidelines. How will you, moneylender, enter the kingdom of heaven while demanding repayment of debts? Preachers of the first millennium of triumphant Christianity asked. Heartless creditors were barred from church sacraments, and their bodies were forbidden burial in Christian cemeteries. Jacques de Vitry, historian and monk, one of the ideological leaders of the Fifth Crusade, told one such story from around 1200. The friends of a rich and particularly ruthless moneylender tried to convince a priest to bury the deceased in a church cemetery. The priest, after much persuasion, agreed but said, "Let's place his body on a donkey and see where God's will takes him. Wherever the donkey takes him, be it to the church, the cemetery, or elsewhere, that's where I will bury him." The body was placed on the donkey, which, without turning right or left, carried it straight out of the city, to the place where thieves were hanged, and there, the donkey forcefully shook off the corpse, sending it tumbling into a heap of dung beneath the gallows. This rejection of lending for profit is a common mindset among civilized peoples. In Christianity, charity, giving vital resources with no expectation of return, is encouraged, for the reward for the giver will be in heaven. Altruistic giving became a moral compass for European civilization. Within this compass, the understanding of debt relationships was also shaped. Centuries of wisdom established a rule: lend only as much as you are ready to give away as a gift. Every gift, no matter how small, becomes a great gift if given with love. John Wolcott. The value of a gift lies not in the gift itself but in the love it conveys. People who do not love themselves generally do not know how to forgive. Louise Hay. Looking at the history of evolution, it becomes clear that the most developed and advanced organisms are those that have firmly rooted the behavioral stereotype of self-sacrifice for the benefit of the adaptability of others within their species. This behavior, where one individual serves another without gaining any benefit, and sometimes even risking itself, is called altruism. The paradox of altruism found in almost all animal communities was explained by William Hamilton in his theory of kin selection. He formulated the general principle that natural selection maximizes not individual fitness but inclusive fitness. In other words, an animal's fitness depends not only on the success of its own reproduction but also on the reproductive success of its relatives. Kin selection shows that individuals within a species are more successful in reproduction if they help relatives, where the benefit to the recipient far outweighs the cost to the donor. In such cases, acts of altruism, including parental care, promote the survival of relatives, thus preserving altruistic genotypes in the gene pool. A key condition is the ability to distinguish relatives within the population. From a Darwinian perspective, altruistic behavior can also be explained by group selection, which helps preserve and develop the species as a whole. Unlike kin altruism, group altruism benefits all carriers of altruistic genes, whether in sharing food or in collective care for the young of the group. Every gift, if appreciated, means you've given a part of your soul. Japanese proverb. All humanity, in essence, is divided into two categories: those who borrow and those who lend. Charles Lamb. Altruism is often observed even without close kinship. American biologist Robert Trivers suggested that this reflects reciprocal altruism. For example, the Bushmen of the Kong tribe living in the Kalahari Desert demonstrate the importance of reciprocal altruism in hunter-gatherer communities. Women gather almost 60% of the protein and carbohydrates by collecting vegetables and fruits. Men spend a lot of time hunting for game, which contains essential amino acids and minerals. The amount of food varies greatly depending on the season, and periods of abundance alternate with times of scarcity. Men usually hunt in pairs, and if someone returns with a catch, the meat is shared among all members of the group. The fortunate ones provide food to the unlucky, knowing that the situation could change. In this way, the Bushmen maximize their chances of obtaining meat and minimize the number of unsuccessful hunts. Reciprocal altruism is believed to have played an important role in human evolution. We see that natural selection favors genes that promote altruistic behavior towards other individuals. By showing care for others and helping them, we are contributing to the survival of our species as a whole. These mechanisms also work at the level of global systemic interconnections. A human being is part of the physical world, and all its laws apply to them. If we view a human as a multi-component system, then everything surrounding this person should be considered parts of that system. All components of the system are closely connected to the center, the person, and exert significant influence. The more important they are to the person, the stronger the bond between them. If you cannot forgive people, you cannot accept your wealth. If your soul is filled with hatred, love cannot find a place in it. You must rid yourself of the negative emotions that consume you and rob you of peace. Robert Gage. Every gift from a friend is a wish for happiness. Richard Bach. When we give something to another person, whether it's a gift or something borrowed, we need to understand that this item is also part of our multi-component system. If we consider this object important to us, it cannot leave our system entirely. Our attachment to it creates an additional strong connection and forms a kind of informational package tied to the item, which reduces the degrees of freedom in our system. In other words, if we are attached to what we give, it continues to affect us even after it leaves our hands. By passing this item to someone else, we also transfer a part of the control, albeit a small one. To avoid this, we must perceive the act of giving as final and not assign excessive value to the gift or not give it at all. Usually, when we lend something, we expect it to be returned. This also limits our freedom because we become dependent on the situation of its return, even if we don't openly acknowledge it. Therefore, when giving a gift, or lending something, we should be mindful, always give from the heart and avoid attaching an informational package, such as the expectation of a return gift. Any additional information, thought, or expectation creates a further link between us and the item. Mentally, it will remain ours, and we will lose a degree of freedom or a piece of control over ourselves. Even if we don't consciously communicate these expectations, they still reach the recipient. As a result, our gift might not be accepted, it might be passed on, or even discarded. Yet it will still remain linked to us. If this happens once, it's not a big deal, but if this becomes a pattern and we give many gifts throughout the year, negative consequences begin to accumulate. A person might collect so much negativity that they stop giving gifts altogether and begin to resent those they've gifted. The person may feel used and experience emotional discomfort. The reason is simple: they don't know how to give freely because they assign too much importance to the act of giving. As soon as a person falls ill, they should search their heart for who they need to forgive. Louise Hay. Those who know how to give also know how to live. Therefore, we should always give sincerely, without hoping for reciprocity or anything in return. If we lend something, it's better to perceive it as a gift right away without expecting its return. This way, we avoid emotional and psychological negativity and only receive positive emotions and gratitude. The deep meaning of giving as a form of communication was formulated back in antiquity. The notable Roman Stoic philosopher and statesman Seneca advised not to spoil friendships with money. If we think well of someone, we shouldn't lend them too much money, as it could turn a friend into an enemy. A small loan makes a man your debtor, a large one makes him your enemy. Seneca emphasized that in business communication, we should always be guided by reason, not emotion, but by moral reason, not cynical calculation. Morality must triumph over cynicism. For Seneca, a person is always both an end and a means. If we respect someone, we shouldn't burden them with excessive debt. The Bible also warns against giving in to temptations, and lead us not into temptation, Matthew 6:9-13. The main temptation in business dealings is not so much the loan itself or the reluctance to repay it, but the conviction that the person is its owner, whereas the true owner of everything in the world is God alone. Every gift, even the smallest, becomes a great gift when given with love. John Wolcott. Give without tiring, as long as there is something to give. The Kabbalah moves the question of debt beyond personal relationships. According to Israeli Kabbalist and founder of the International Academy of Kabbalah, Michael Lettman, society's collective burden of debt is a sign of an impending global crisis, which could lead to the outbreak of a Third World War. Debt extortion drives people into debt slavery and will end with the collapse of the legal system. Debt forgiveness is the result of the system's inability to handle debts, an admission that the debt was created by fraudulent means. The only question is whether we will initiate this forgiveness ourselves or whether we will have to accept it by force, Lettman says. All major religions praise those who give. The Prophet Muhammad encouraged Muslims to give each other gifts. Their purpose, as in all parts of the world, is to foster good relations between people. In one of his hadiths, Muhammad said, "Gifts strengthen love among you, so try to do this to love one another and strengthen your bonds." Children love receiving gifts. As they grow older, people begin to find joy in the act of giving as well. Elder Pagios of Mount Athos said that the one who receives a gift experiences human joy, while the one who gives experiences divine joy. Every gift, even the smallest, becomes a great gift when given with love. John Wolcott. Every gift from a friend is a wish for happiness. Richard Bach. If a gift is well received, it means you have given a part of your soul. Japanese proverb. Perhaps the most famous gift in European, or rather, Christian, tradition is the one given by the Magi to the infant Jesus. The cold, rational do ut day, I give so that you may give, of the Roman prayer formula is replaced here by heartfelt, selfless giving as an expression of love and devotion. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, brought by Balthazar, Caspar, and Melchior to the manger in Bethlehem, begin a long tradition of Christmas gifts, without which Christmas is incomplete. Do not look a gift horse in the mouth. Better not to give than to give and then reproach. True wealth is not in one's name but in not needing to borrow. Looking at the texts of the Gospel, we find not only a confirmation of the law of selfless giving but also its reinforcement. When you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Luke 14:12-14. Christ's words do not forbid us from sharing meals with our loved ones, but they call us to something greater to show love toward others that transcends earthly calculations. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Luke 6:32-36. A well-known Buddhist parable includes the following episode. A poor man once met the Buddha and asked him, "Buddha, why am I so poor?" "Because you do not practice generosity," Buddha replied. In Buddhism, generosity, dana in Sanskrit, is considered one of the fundamental virtues. By giving to others, a person frees themselves from the painful focus on their own desires. Many traditional schools of Buddhism see the cultivation of generosity as a necessary first step on the path to enlightenment. Buddhists believe that generosity is the foundation on which the spiritual community is built, and it is highly contagious. When we are generous, it sparks generosity in others, creating ever-expanding circles of giving. Much attention is paid to the selflessness of the gift. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, one of the great experts in Tibetan Buddhism of the 20th century, said, in some teachings of the Bodhisattva, it is said that before giving even a small thing, one must check the state of their mind. Can any one of us truly give something? For example, if you want to give someone food, make sure you feel no regret. You can always give from the heart. Intention is key. Those practicing the teachings must especially consider the nuances of generosity. And you must examine your motivation, too. Are you giving because you expect something in return? Or are you giving because this person is important or influential? One by one, you must carefully examine your thoughts. One of the secrets to a long and fruitful life is to offer forgiveness to everyone before you go to sleep. E. Landers. The tradition of giving gifts, whether to close ones or complete strangers, in some cultures, and in certain cases, even to enemies, dates back to the historical past of humanity. Folk tales, legends, stories, and songs are filled with references to various gifts, wine, treats, offerings, and donations of all kinds. In a Kazakh folk tale, fate rewarded a generous pilgrim and punished a miser. After giving all his provisions to the miser, the generous man was forced to spend the night in a cave. Trying to quell his hunger, he chewed on a blade of grass, which turned out to be magical. This granted him the ability to understand the speech of animals. Thanks to this ability, he cured a king's blind daughter and found a treasure. The miser, envious of the generous man, sought to acquire the same knowledge. The generous man, once again, did not withhold and shared his knowledge with the miser. However, this magical knowledge did not bring the miser happiness. In the magical cave, he was torn apart by wild beasts. Folk wisdom teaches, generosity is rewarded manifold. A particularly significant instance of gift-giving in early human history occurred within the framework of what is called prestige economy. In the conditions of a clan-based society, egalitarian, from the French égalité equality, principles prevailed. All the products generated through the combined efforts of the community were divided equally among its members. However, as progress in agriculture and other practices led to the creation of surplus, it became increasingly difficult to distribute everything evenly. Certain families began to stand out among the rest of the community, and their relative wealth became more apparent, contradicting the prevailing egalitarian values of that time. This is when the custom of distributing surpluses to relatives, kin, and fellow tribespeople, often in the form of gifts or non-repayable loans, emerged. People gave sincerely, without expecting anything in return, offering as much as they were willing to part with. Even a small gift is not a burden. Forgiveness is a two-way street. By forgiving someone, we also forgive ourselves in that moment. Paulo Coelho. This phenomenon was so important that societies practicing such non-repayable lending are described by some ethnographers as prestige-oriented primitive societies. There are numerous examples confirming this practice. Ethnographic expeditions have documented the distribution of reed mats, cowrie shells, and other symbols of wealth among the peoples of Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. Those who gave the most gained the most fame. From these individuals, as well as from those who distinguished themselves in warfare or defense against threats, emerged the local, clan, and tribal aristocracy. Most people are familiar with the situation when a friend or relative asks to borrow money. This is especially relevant during times of economic hardship, when the banking system becomes more rigid and less forgiving towards borrowers. How should one behave in such a situation? Be honest with yourself, psychologists advise. Do not expect anything in return. If you've decided to give a person a gift, do so sincerely, with a kind heart, for the sake of the moment. Studies have shown that when people give gifts to each other, spend time and money on each other, they become happier and healthier. However, if someone gives a gift with internal tension, expecting something in return, they may never find the happiness they seek. A gift is not a transaction, it is not criticized, but praised. Gifts are not taken back. A free shoelace is better than a purchased belt. Money doesn't grow on trees. Arseny Tarkovsky once wrote, "Everything on earth lives by mutual trust." If we have acted according to the golden rule of ethics, then we have acted correctly in the highest sense of the word. An act of trust will inevitably be repaid in times of hardship and need when we require help. It is essential to believe that we will be granted assistance if we have offered help to others. Moreover, we must view life itself as a precious gift, and then gratitude will be returned to us with grace.